now for Inside Utah Politics with Lindsay Aerts.
Well, welcome into IUP TV today. We're so glad you're here joining us. So we've got a lot on the docket to talk about today. A race for the direction of the Utah GOP. We will also touch on Senator John Curtis giving his maiden speech on the Senate floor. Trump's big, beautiful bill is on the docket as well, and Trump potentially accepting a gift from Qatar in the form of a plane. Our panelists will weigh in on that. I want to introduce you to Leah Murray. She is a professor of political science at Weber State University, and then Adam Gardner, a lobbyist with ASG Consulting. Thank you both for being here. Quick introductions. Tell us about yourselves.
I'm a lobbyist for ASG Consulting. I have a number of clients in the state of Utah. I do state lobbying, local lobbying, and federal lobbying, and it's a blast. In the past, I've worked on the Senate side for Senator Romney and on the House side for Congressman Rob Bishop. I also served in elected office as well.
And I was Adam's teacher.
That's true.
Everything he is because of you.
Oh, yeah, I don't even say that. I'm political science professor up at Weber State University, also director of the Walker Institute of Politics and Public Service. And my calling, I don't know what the right word is for that, is to get people like Adam from out of my classroom, into the
real
world, making the world a better place.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, want to introduce you to producer Peter.
Hi, folks.
Hi, Peter.
Sorry, I had to cue myself up there.
How are you?
I'm doing great.
You look lovely today. I always make fun of your outfits.
I got the
I'm not really
haircut,
making fun of.
I got a nice shirt.
You did
There's
get a
buttons
haircut.
on it. That's a step up.
Peter gets a quarterly haircut.
Yeah.
So he got
Buttons on
that.
the shirt a requirement?
I didn't even.
Okay.
It's not a
I didn't even
requirement.
realize I was
For
doing
guys,
the
it is.
quarterly haircut until
If
my
you're on
barber
TV.
pointed it out. It's bad. It's
Quarterly
bad.
haircut. But if you've watched the show in any regularity, like last week, Peter often looks like he just rolled out of bed. But that's okay.
I'm cleaning it up.
Because, yeah.
Listen, I
No.
bought assorted creams and powders, and I'm going to start looking nice on this camera.
You've never had to be on TV before. He is the magic behind
Got
the
my
scenes.
whole career ahead of me. I can start a little rough.
I love it. I love it. Okay, let's start with this. The fate of the direction of the Utah GOP at stake this weekend when the party will vote, delegates will vote on whether to elect a new chair. They will elect a new chair, whether it's the current chair, Rob Axson, or it's Phil Lyman, who is a former legislator here in the state. Predictions for that race. Also have more topics from that convention I want to talk about. Leah, go ahead.
Yeah, so before you have probably much better predictions than I have, my entire social media feed is full of people talking about endorsements, right? So one thing I just want to say is I love that there's a race because all the Republican delegates in my life that are in my social media are very engaged. I think my prediction is Rob wins. But that I'm not in it. Does that make sense? Like I'm only reading it from what I see, and maybe the people who are friends with me in social media or follow me on social media would be a certain, a
Well,
Rob
and it
type.
is kind of hard to get a sense because this is not like a general election, right, where we have some polling or anything like that, although we are expecting
It's
some
the
polling.
diehards.
Yeah, it's the diehard Republican faction who tend to lean more to the right than the broader delegate, what's the word I'm looking for? The broader
electorate.
electorate of Republicans. And so, Adam, how do you think this goes?
Well, it's interesting because Rob Axson is to the right. Rob is a conservative who worked for Mike Lee for something like 15 years. So his bona fides in the party should be pretty set. But the thing is, you have the Phil Lyman faction who doesn't believe in the Mike Lee faction. They're against Mike Lee right now as a rhino for talking to President Trump to actually have President Trump endorse Robert Axson in the race. So you have a group of diehard delegates that have written a letter to the President of the United States with the state seal on the top that says you are receiving bad information from evil people within the party. Give me a break.
Are they allowed to use the state seal? Let's just go
I don't
there
even
for
think
a
it was
second.
the state seal.
Okay.
It didn't have the state seal. It was
Okay.
everything in the middle without it being the seal.
Okay, so a version of the state seal.
Lieutenant Governor doesn't have to get upset about this.
Okay.
But there is a real debate going on within the party that is saying, look, we're so sick of this infighting, the Phil Lyman type of infighting, that this purity test. We're going to measure you against what I believe is true republicanism or whatever President Trump says. So we're just going to let this thing burn. Let Phil get elected. Nobody's going to be able to raise any money. The apparatus won't work to get Republicans elected. Let's just let it go. And then you have those on the inside that say, No, that's what Arizona did. That's what Colorado did. And we're losing every single race because of it, because there's no infrastructure to help Republicans get elected.
Right.
So that is the real debate. Which direction of the party do delegates want to have? Do you want an apparatus that helps Republicans get elected, that can work with elected officials? Or do you see the party not as something that helps Republicans get elected, but something that puts their feet to the fire, that judges those that are in office as pure or not pure?
And to that purity test, I wanted to bring up the conversation of signature versus convention candidates, because one of the proposals delegates will vote on is whether to strip party membership from candidates who gather signatures. Leah, make the point you wanted to make on the last point, and then is that the right direction for the party to go?
I just really wanted to ask a question of my Republican friend here, that is it a good idea to have a litmus test, right? These purity tests, whether it is, I just hate this. Whenever someone disagrees with me, then they're a rhino. Yeah. Right, so you're a Republican in name only if you disagree with me. That's not actually how a party is built.
But this is the total irony of this fraction of the party, because they're saying that we are delegates who represent our neighbors. But that's not what they want to be at all. Right. They're saying, no, I am the delegate, I am the decider, and you have to match my brand of republicanism. That's a problem.
Right, so the issue I see is there's too many litmus tests, right? So one is, did you talk to President Trump and is he supporting Axon? Two is, did you like signatures? Did you gather signatures? And I just have to say, the entire conversation, and just correct me if I'm wrong, I think talks the Republican caucus convention system into irrelevance.
Yes, I think that's exactly right. I think if you go this direction of the litmus test, you're going to get 75, 80% of Republicans who are going to say, even if I am available for caucus night, nope, I do not want to be a part of this.
Right.
And to that point, this vote on whether to strip party membership for signature gathering candidates, if the party does indeed, if the delegates do support this measure, some see that as a direct attack on the signature path, which could then be interpreted as a violation of what's called QPP status, right? Which is what the party has to subscribe to in order to put candidates on the publicly administered
They're breaking
ballot.
the law.
So yeah, so that's the question is, does that break the law? And so why would delegates support that if it breaks the law?
Because they think they're right.
Yeah, and we've seen, honestly, I think the presidential administration has kind of shown this. If we don't like the ruling from the judges, we're just going to ignore it. The Solicitor General said that in the Supreme Court today, said, sometimes we're okay with ignoring the law or ignoring the ruling if we don't like it. And that's how a lot of these delegates think. Because we're doing what's pure and what's right, we get to ignore the law.
Okay, we'll have to watch and see how that goes. It'll be very interesting.
But I'm a delegate, so I get a vote.
So you will have a say.
I'm not going to tell you I'm voting for either.
It's funny, when I interviewed Rob Axon, he wouldn't tell me either the direction. I mean, he told me his view for the party, but he wouldn't answer the question of the signature gathering faction because he had to remain neutral. So I'll give him that. But I would be interested to know, does he support that? He hasn't said publicly whether it does.
It's just hard to be a chair and say, sure, I support this, and then we're going to get sued over it, and now I have to spend all of my time raising money that could go to candidates, but now we have to spend it on legal fees. Not a winning message.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. All right, want to talk about this too. Senator John Curtis was on the Senate floor this week giving his maiden floor speech since he took office in January. He talked about wildly honest conversations he believes that Congress needs to have right now. Let's take a look at one of his points.
We, and I mean we, Democrats and Republicans in this body, are not being honest with the American people when we pretend that Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare don't need reform. And we are equally dishonest when we weaponize fear, telling seniors and the most vulnerable that reform means abandonment. It doesn't. It never has.
Okay, so he's talking about the debt and deficit there and just talking about how, one side is seeing it, the Republicans are seeing it as, these are the entitlements are the problem, right? And Democrats are seeing it as you're taking health care and social services from millions of people, the most vulnerable among us. But he's saying we need to have these conversations. What do you make of his message there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we hosted Representative Blake Moore up at Weber State a couple of years ago, and he was trying to say that, right? So it's a town hall, which can always get kind of feisty. We were very well behaved. But he was having a conversation about this needs reform. This is unsustainable. We cannot keep spending this kind of money on these entitlement programs. And the audience was mostly older people who were very upset with him, right? So I think that the senator is not wrong, Senator Curtis. We have to have the conversation. But holy cow, I've seen it live in action not go well.
And sometimes, Adam, I feel like maybe Republicans get the messaging wrong, right? To his point where, we need to address Medicaid and Medicare reform, but it turns into this message of we're just going to strip your coverage, your health coverage.
Yeah, seniors that are already in the system that have spent their entire lives paying into it, you guys are protected. We want you to understand that we're not talking about you. If you're age 55 and over, whatever that number is, we've decided you guys, everything is going to stay the same for you. But if you're 40 and you are banking on Social Security being there and providing for your family, you are up in the night. Like, yes, we have to be wildly honest with people. Senator Curtis is absolutely right. We need to have tough conversations that, to be honest with you, have to be done behind closed doors.
Right.
From the federal government, because otherwise you have to pull in labor and AARP,
right,
and the tax foundation and Committee for Responsible Budget. Kick them all out. You guys, Mitt Romney had a bill called the Trust Act that would do exactly this. Behind closed doors, we formulate a plan and we come out and we say to the American people, the Democrats and the Republicans have a plan. We're going to save Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and the Highway Trust Fund. You guys take it or leave it. And you can vote it up or down. That's what we need to do. But we have to talk to the American people and can convince them that these trust funds are going to be gone by the time you ever need to use them for my generation.
And entitlement is some of our largest chunk of federal spending,
correct,
right? And so when we talk about the debt and deficit, you can't really have a conversation about that without talking about these programs.
Correct. I mean, if you mean it. Right?
Yeah.
So if you want to get after the $37 trillion debt that we have, the mandatory spending that goes out every year, that side of the ledger you can't touch without some serious reform.
You could cut our entire Pentagon and defense budget, $900 billion, $1 trillion a year. You are still going to run a deficit if you do not fix entitlements. That is 3/4 of our entire budget. We have our members of Congress are talking about it, but Congress writ large is not doing anything about it.
So what is it about Medicaid? Let's just take Medicaid, for example. What is it about that program that is costing us?
Oh, well, the issue is it's healthcare. So we might disagree on this. But Medicare is health insurance, healthcare for our older population. Medicaid is health insurance, healthcare for our poor population. And the answer is we spend so much money in this country per capita on health care, on those costs, that to a certain extent, I might almost argue the health care conversation predates you know what I mean? The entitlement.
You need to fix. You can't fix
right,
one without the other.
Yeah.
Right, that they are, cascading into each other.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. Most states also see it as free money.
Right.
If we put $1 into it, we get $2 back. So why wouldn't we do this? And I don't know if my numbers are completely right, but why wouldn't we do this? We need to invest in Medicaid because we get more back from the federal government. That's the wrong mentality to have. We need to fix a systemic problem and not just keep paying into the system.
Yeah.
That leads us into the conversation about the big, beautiful bill, which is the spending and budget plan that so far is making its way through the House and may face some hurdles in the Senate. Talk to me about its $1.5 trillion in spending cuts that the federal government wants to do to offset making the 2017 Trump tax cuts permanent. Some are calling it not far enough. Others say it's slashing Medicaid in a way that's going to leave 8.6 million without coverage. Where do we stand with this plan? Is it the right one?
Hard question at the end.
Is it the right one? Is this the right angle? I want to hear from my Democratic friend.
No, I mean, I think probably not. I mean, so one, if the answer is we're going to address the $37 trillion debt, we're not even getting close. $1.5 trillion in cuts doesn't even cover last year's deficit, right? So the answer is it's not the right one. And secondly, it feels like, and so disagree with me, it's on the backs of Medicaid, which are our most vulnerable people. And Senator Josh Hawley, so you can knock me over with a feather, I'm in a Venn diagram with him, basically saying that Missouri can't handle that. Medicaid, very much, his people depend on that, right? So it doesn't go far enough. Our senators who want a lot of spending cuts, it doesn't actually do that job. And the half-hearted job it does is on the backs of our poor people.
So I think this is kind of nuanced as well. I think you have a lot of 20s, 30s, 40s men that don't have jobs and that aren't looking. They have actually taken themselves out of the workforce. Medicaid is providing their insurance. Sorry, you have to pay for your own now. We're going to take you off the rolls and you have to get a job or at least be looking for work. So I think that's a step in the right direction. 1.4 million illegal immigrants that are on the rolls. Sorry, this is for American citizens only. You guys are off the rolls.
What if they're doing work here?
If they're doing work here, I still think the federal, an illegal immigrant that comes into the country by law are not supposed to be receiving benefits.
So by the way, there's another issue. That's an immigration reform problem. So we kind of have to solve immigration on the way to solving.
And Leah's right. We're talking about issues like healthcare and illegal immigration or immigration in general that Republicans and Democrats have a financial vested interest in not fixing because it is a great political tool. So yes, you're right. We need to fix those problems. But also, like Josh Hawley, we talked about this nuanced answer. The Medicaid, the things that we're cutting for actual individuals, I'm not as opposed to those. But then you have significant cuts to rural hospitals, which would really hurt Utah. And they get no funding and they're not for profit. And so, yeah, I understand that the federal government puts money into these because they control all of our land and where our population is. It'd be great if they actually pitched in every once in a while and helped these rural hospitals. It's a nuanced response.
No, I love that conversation too, because rural areas, 20% of Americans live in rural areas and they don't have broadband. We've lied to them about getting them internet access. I mean,
which administration?
No, that was the Biden administration. No, let's be clear. So we are failing people, in our country.
Adam's so proud of himself.
I'm so proud.
I'm glad, but then we call it a big beautiful bill, and that's a fail. So yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay, part of this raising money for the federal government too. Part of this one amendment to this impacts Utah directly, and that is the sell-off of public lands. Representative Malloy added it to the budget. Environmental groups pushing back on it, saying this is not okay. We cannot sell off our public lands. The cities, the counties, the locals say they want to build some infrastructure on it, whether it's for water or their growing needs, their airport, their reservoirs, things like that. So they have arguably noble causes to use from it, but I think there is just a real consternation about selling off public lands, right? It just gives people heartburn. So does this
sell
help?
it off?
Should we? but apparently
I have
it
no
doesn't agree.
heartburn. I am free. My arteries are free.
Is it a slippery slope,
No,
though? You
it's
sell
not a
these
slippery
parcels
slope.
now, and then you sell 18.5 million
And then we're
parcels
Montana.
later.
Sell 18.5 parcels later
To wealthy
What?
billionaires.
No, we're having two different conversations.
Okay, that's
we're
right.
saying selling off federal land into the hands of private individuals, not necessarily. You want to, I think a lot of Republicans in Utah want to avoid what happened in Montana, where they sold off all of these federal lands, and then Ted Turner buys them up and locks them up completely for people to use. That's not what we want. What we're talking about here is you have places like Beaver or other rural counties in the state of Utah, which are 75%, 90% owned by the federal and controlled by the federal government. But right now, if you have a land lease with a creek or a river running through it, a farmer can't fix his own creek because the federal government owns it and controls it.
Is there
We're
not a
talking
way
about-
to give control without selling it? Is there a way for the federal government to just say, okay, you can manage this, but we own it? It's like a lease.
Yeah, but if we're having a revenue problem and we're going to really have conversations about debt and deficit, that's a great way to raise revenue.
Sure, that's the conversation we're having now, and maybe that's what they want it for. But
And
I'm
it's
just
twofold.
saying,
You
if the argument is manage the lands, lease it, or Congress can give
Because based
management
on
control.
Republican, whether you have a Republican administration or a Democrat administration, no one keeps their word. So
Right.
I can say you can manage all this land because we are a very friendly Republican administration. You guys manage it. And then the Biden administration comes in and goes, not only can you not manage it, we're locking up all of the leases, we're going to make it a monument, and we are going to take it over completely. And now we're locking Native Americans from going to get firewood on the land. We are locking everybody out. No one can keep their word.
I also think, too, if it is the case that we need some of this land to address our housing crisis that we have in this state, no one's going to give you a mortgage on land that is so, how do I say, unpredictable. Right. So
Great point. Great point.
Interesting. Okay. To that point, Producer Peter, can you set up this clip for us with the Southern Utah Wilderness Alliance? Because we talked to them on Inside Utah Politics, which airs Sunday at 8 and 4 on ABC4. So we'd invite you to watch that on your broadcast TV. This is SUA talking about why they believe this is a slippery slope in selling off these lands.
Cascaded.
This reconciliation amendment is just one facet of the larger game that the representative, our congressional delegation, and the governor are trying to play, which is really trying to force the sale of these millions of acres of what are federal public land.
So he's kind of alleging there that this is just one piece in the broader, to your point,
He's
sell
done
it
the
all
same,
off.
Their organization has done the exact same thing with Bears Ears and with Grand Escalante. They have done the exact same thing. Instead of selling it off for resources, they have locked it up for everyone to enjoy and making them national monuments, unilaterally, by the way. This at least would have members of Congress who are duly elected by us making the decisions instead of a unilateral decision locking up land.
And I think right there, and so I'm just going to pick on you a little bit, but also his statement is this is a game that they are playing, right? Maybe a little bit we all start building some trust into the conversations. I don't know.
Because they,
what he also said there, and you don't hear in that clip, but in my conversation with them, he's saying that, that the locals, there's no guarantee on what they will use the land for. So yes, we are not selling it to billionaires. We are selling it to local governments, but there's no guarantee, no writing, no federal protections, no protections whatsoever that St. George is going to use it for what they say they're going to use it for.
And to chime in as well, just some of our reporting on the news side of things, Washington City has made clear to us that the vision for a lot of this land is real estate development, right? Like that has to
Affordable
factor
housing.
into the understanding.
Yeah. So, it's fair to say, okay, we're selling this to local governments for their needs so they can manage it. But to your point, with the trust thing, who's to stop them from developing it in any sort of way?
Even if UDOT wants to build a big, beautiful highway somewhere
I love the
on state land, they can't just go build something. There are tons of protections for the environment. You have wetlands. Army Corps of Engineers has to approve the West Davis corridor. It took them 20 years to build it because they had to approve every step of it. You have to do NEPA requirements. There are a whole host of protections for all land, not just federal.
That don't go away with this law.
They don't go away with this law. So if you're going to build on it, you still have to do all of your environmental checks. The EPA comes by and they inspect, or has the state inspect on their behalf, your groundwater, your drinking water. There are tons of federal prohibitions and protections in the law already. They just want 1,000 times more. I'm not a fan of that. Good for Celeste Malloy for taking it to
Sell it all off, Adam says. We will leave it there for today. We will have no more federal land in Utah because Adam will get rid of all of it.
Public land, yes. Federal land, no.
Oh, okay. That's the difference. Adam Gardner, Leah Murray, thank you both for your insights today. Really appreciate it. And as always, we can always disagree and remain friends. That's what the show is about, too. Professor and student. Thank you for being with us. Join us again for our next episode of Inside Utah Politics on your streaming platform.